Welcome to the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight presented by Sports Car Market Magazine. I'm Darren Roberts. Before we begin, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Also, be sure to join in the conversation and share your thoughts by leaving us a comment below. Our guest today is John Kraman. He is Director of Company Relations and Lead TV Analyst for Mecum Auctions. Welcome, John.
Hey, Darren. Always a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me on.
Indeed. So it's been a little while since we've seen you. So why don't you recap on some of the latest Mecum news?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you what, my friend, it's been a heck of a year. We finished out 2022 with an all-time record. Can you believe it? Sitting down $785 million in the sale of collector vehicles. That is a all-time record for us, and all-time record for any live collector vehicle auctions. And we've got our fingers crossed that we're going to crack that in 2023. And good news is, because with this success that we've seen so far in the first part of the year, we are already on track to exceed that lofty number for next year.
Well, you guys have done some big stuff already. Most recently, coming off of the Mecum Indy sale, there were some really fascinating lots that were there. $113 million in sales in Indy, by the way. Congratulations on that. Huge number.
Right. Thanks, man.
The one that really sort of, I think, captivated everybody was the Black Ghost. What was the Black Ghost? What is the Black Ghost? Where did it come from? What was the result? Let's talk about that car.
Yeah, that was sort of the shot heard around the world. Very long story, but I'll keep it brief and concise. We go back to 1970, a young man, military veteran, joins the Detroit Police Department and decides he wants to order what he would consider to be his ultimate car. So the Dodge Challenger had just debuted, as we know, in 1970, and he ordered one up with a ton of options. An RT with, of course, the 426 Hemi, 425 horsepower, 4-speed super track pack with 410 gears, stuff like power windows and AM/FM radio, gator grain vinyl top. It's the only one that was ever built like that. And he owned it up until his passing in 2015. And then he handed it down to his son. Now, it's a pretty typical story, but what makes this car different is it was referred to as the Black Ghost because it was a illegal street racing legend on the streets of Detroit. Keep in mind, he was a Detroit police officer and he would street race this car. And then as soon as he would do a little stoplight Grand Prix, he would skedaddle to home, put it away for a couple months, so that he didn't get caught. And knock on wood, he never did. And so the story and the legend and the lore of this car is so significant that Dodge, during their last call series, we know that 2023 is the end of the line for the current Dodge Challenger platform with the Hellcat engine. They built 301 special edition cars for the U.S. called the Black Ghost as an honor to this car. And it earned a place on the National Historic Register. Yes, it sat Washington, D.C. Mall in the Glass House on display, one of only, I think, around 35 cars that have gotten that honor. So anyway, when the smoke cleared, the family did pretty good, about $1 million hammer price, and Dodge gave a brand new Black Ghost to the Qualls family. Greg Qualls, the son and caretaker of the family now, very soon is going to be driving a brand new Black Ghost. So hopefully he'll keep that one and turn that one over to his son when his son's of age. So great story, great sale, got a lot of press, and the new owner of the car, big collector, very, very pleased with his purchase.
Yeah, it's an awesome story. And Haggerty did a brilliant documentary on it a couple of years ago that I highly recommend everybody check out. I mean, the story behind this car was phenomenal, and the family's amazing, and great result that they got with Mecum. So very exciting there. Another monster Mopar that you guys sold in Indy was the 1970 Plymouth Cuda Rapid Transit show car. $2.2 million result on that. What is that car? And it's kind of unusual. So explain the significance there.
Man, yeah, Mopar history, Mopar magic at Mecum Indy this year. Back in 1970, Plymouth wanted to kick off a program to highlight their brand new product line. So they built 3 cars. They built a Duster, they built a Roadrunner, and they built a 70 Cuda. For the and they went out on the show circuit. The cars were custom painted and had all kinds of crazy body work, generated interest. They would go to dealerships and shows. 1971, they carried forward, both the Duster and the Cuda. They shared a similar body style to the new models. They got a new Roadrunner for 1971, but they repainted the Barracuda, the Cuda, 446 pack car. It went from kind of a green theme to an orange theme. And fast forward to today, in 1971, that car was sold. It was put away its entire life. Odometer showing about 900 miles. The guy that bought the car is still alive, in his 90s in a nursing home. Chuck Miller, the guy that built the car and painted the car, Styline Customs out of Detroit. He's in his 80s. He drove the car up on the auction block and spoke to the audience about the car. It captivated all of us. It rolled on the auction block, Darren, with a pre-auction estimate of $500,000 to $650. By the time the smoke cleared, it hammered for $2 million plus the fee, so $2.2 million. It just shocked and amazed everybody. But, a big part of not only Mopar history, but American pop culture as well. The Rapid Transit show was a well-known, well-promoted event. And interestingly, all four of those cars exist today. But this is the only one that's unrestored in original condition. And with 900 miles, that's not going to be showing up at, cruise nights and cars and coffees.
Yeah, pretty exceptional car for sure. Always a lot of fun stuff
Indeed.
going on there, definitely. And the money's there too. I mean, let's talk to January sales. $258 million in sales in January for Mecum. This has got to be a record month for you guys.
Absolutely record month for anybody. In fact, that big number split between two auctions, our Kissimmee, Florida auction, which is the world's biggest collector car auction. And then a couple weeks after that, we back it up with world's biggest vintage motorcycle auction in Las Vegas at South Point. Great event. I'm a motorcycle guy and I'm a car guy. We had plenty of television coverage on Motortrend, by the way, in both of those. But yeah, it was a huge month and it really has got us set off for what we're hoping, fingers crossed, is going to be another record year. All indications appear that we should be on track to do that. And interest and passion and the distraction, I think, that comes along with dabbling in collector cars, buying them, selling them, working on them, driving them, showing them. It just continues to put a lot of people in their happy place. And, our forecast for this market moving forward is, man, it's weird. We think it's going to continue to be strong. There's a whole new wave of enthusiasts getting involved. The younger guys, and I'll define that briefly. I define a younger guy at about 50 years old, not 20s and 30s. They can't afford it yet. But if they work hard and they aspire, then, hopefully by the time they roll around there, we'll be ready to pass it on to a new generation. But it's incredible. Vintage cars, all eras from the 1920s, 1930s, all the way up to the present day. Every single automotive segment is stronger than ever. And it sounds like a sales pitch. Apologize for that, but I call them like I see them.
So your top sales in Kissimmee this year were pretty much across the board Ferraris. What other trends did you see there? And what have you seen kind of hold over between Kissimmee and on through Indy? And we're broadcasting here to Monterey here shortly.
Right.
Where do you kind of see the market moving in the second half? And has it been consistent? And has it been related to, is there any relation to what you saw in January Kissimmee?
Well, let me just first of all tell you that that's a really good question. Because if we look at the results of the top 10 between our Kissimmee, Florida auction and our Indy auction, those are our two biggest auctions, by the way, you'll see quite a disparity. Indy, the top 10, very heavy American performance. If we go over to Kissimmee, there's a bigger spectrum of inventory, including late model and vintage exotics. Back, I don't know, we'll call it the old days, 10, 15 years ago, Mecum has been in business 36 years, since 1988. But breaking out of Corvettes and muscle cars and 50s cars that's been a dedicated effort. We have recognized that those type of cars, exotic cars and others, trucks and SUVs, of course, they've, come on strong as well. But what's happened is we've identified this is a market that we want to go after, especially at our higher profile auctions. And there's two in particular where we attract a high percentage of those cars. Number one is Kissimmee. Number two is our upcoming Monterey auction in August. But our Indy auction, being the original, the granddaddy of all Mecum auctions, is known as the muscle car auction, and it attracts the world's best muscle cars and the world's best collections of muscle cars. I just want to say, of that $113 million we did at Indy back in mid-May, almost $37,000 of that, almost a third of it, were from prominent collections. So you begin to see a bit of a trend of not only high-quality individual consignments spanning all types and all generations, but now also the big collectors, when it comes time to let their collections change hands, they're coming to us to do it. And the results have just been incredible for everybody.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of collectors kind of cash out of their collections and turn around and start bigger and better collections too. So it does seem to sort of be a cycle of things. Speaking of collections and speaking of your motorcycle auction, I'm a huge motorcycle guy, just like you are. One particular group of bikes in January really caught my attention. Mike Wolfe of TV fame, his As Found a motorcycle collection. What was that? How did Mecum get involved? What was featured there? And what was the collection's top seller?
Yeah, man, who isn't a fan of Mike Wolfe and the show American Pickers? I mean, what a guy, what a show. The opportunity, frankly, for us to work with him in advance on a lot of promotion, to be involved in actually getting the consignment and then having it pay off in such a huge way. Huge thrill. Great guy, was in the booth with us, the announce booth on Motortrend for a couple segments, just providing some great insight. But, Mike, like everybody else, he's kind of getting up there. Time is marching on. And he's just simply having a hard time managing his gigantic collection. So he picked 63 motorcycles, barn finds, as we know. You got to give him credit. He's the guy that I think put barn find on the map and almost made it kind of cool to have something that has been put away, not forgotten, but has been put away and just set aside for a while. And what's shocking is of the 63 motorcycles that he brought to us for the auction, sold 100% of them, by the way. He knew the story on every single one of them, was spending a lot of time talking with the potential buyers and then the actual buyers afterwards to make sure that the stories on the motorcycles are going to continue as we move on to the future. Great guy, great collection, great success. And I wouldn't be surprised if we do it again with him down the road. I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I'd be looking forward to that, definitely. And you're absolutely correct. I mean, 100% of the bikes in my collection are barn finds, and he definitely had a huge impact on me, being able to appreciate, things like that and understand kind of what I was looking at when I was looking at things of that nature. So, I mean, important stuff. And I mean, he's had an impact on certainly the motorcycle community and probably the car community as well as a result of that. So, moving forward a little bit, you guys are headed to Kissimmee before you head to Monterey. So why don't you give us a quick preview of that, kind of tell us what that's about. That's July 6th through July 9th for those keeping score. So kind of preview the summer sale in Kissimmee.
Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic. It's, I think, our third year that we've been down in the Orlando area in the summer. And what has happened is we don't want to take anything away from our January auction as, the big collector vehicle event of the year. But what happened was during the pandemic era, as I like to call it, there were some venues we simply couldn't go to, just for a variety of reasons. Whether the venue was shut down, the state, county, local restrictions and different things. So we wanted to keep it going and do it safely, but keep our auctions going. So we decided to go twice a year instead of just once in January, to go to Orlando/Kissimmee. Now, when we talk about Kissimmee, Orlando, it's the same. Kissimmee is a suburb of Orlando. In fact, Disney World is in Kissimmee, not Orlando. Anyway, so what we've done is the past couple of years, in fact, last year we were at the Orlando Convention Center. This year we're at Osceola Heritage Park. Now that's where we hold our big January auction. This is a lot smaller. The crowds aren't going to be there, and the volume of inventory is going to be a lot less. The quality is going to be less, but it's a great celebration of entry level and mid-level collectibles, which is the heart and soul of that Florida market. I mean, those people there, they are about as enthusiastic with collector vehicles as anybody, and they drive their cars there. So we're expecting to have, probably not any major collections or any sort of, headline winners there. But if the last couple of years down there has been any indication, we'll have a high sell rate, we'll have nice crowds, and we'll have great cars that people can actually drive. Unlike the six-figure cars that we see one after another at our January event. So I think it's going to be a permanent part of our Mecum schedule, even as we move forward out of the pandemic. We're not going to back off the gas down there. We sure like that market, and they like us.
Yeah, I mean, might as well rock it twice if you can do that, certainly. And,
yes.
It sounds like a fun event with fun cars. And I mean, that's what this hobby is really about is that stuff. So let's talk Monterey. August 17th through 19th, Mecum is returning to the Monterey Peninsula. What should people expect this year? What's new? What's different? Kind of give us a rundown of what to expect when you guys set up shop there.
Yeah, it's, Darren, it's so fun. We go to Monterey and everything changes. It's a completely different dynamic from what we normally do. It allows all of us to kind of operate outside of our normal box, because what we're dealing with is our smallest individual auction as far as consignments, around 600 to target. But we'll have by far the highest per car dollar average of any of the 16 auctions on our schedule. So it's an interesting dynamic. We also call it the daytime auction. And I'll tell you why we do that. Our auction is going to be during, of course, the big historic week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And we try to be done around 4 or 5 o'clock because there are so many other events going on there on the peninsula in the evening. We want to be able to make it convenient for folks to be there to bid and see the cars, but yet we don't want to tie up their whole day. So we'll have a couple hundred cars a day. Over 3 days, we'll have plenty of coverage also on Motortrend, so folks that can't make it can tune in. You can always watch us streaming at Mecum.com. There's no commentary, but you can see gavel-to-gavel auction action by heading over to the website. And this year, I think the theme is going to be collections. And I think probably one of the most noteworthy collections that we've ever had is a collection called Veloce, Schnell, Fast. And I've had a lot of people ask me, what does all that mean? Well, it makes sense, and we'll see see what you guys think of it. But Veloce, of course, Italian for speed or velocity. Schnell, same thing for German. And then Fast is, of course, the English. It's Italian, it's German, and it's a British sports cars. And it's an incredible collection. The owner is very private, is a very well-known collector, but his name and story is not being published. It's going to be about the cars. So as of right now, we're still building a big consignment lineup for there. We're just in the early stages of putting all that together, but that's going to be the big one. 12 Ferraris, 7 Porsches, 4 Austin Healey's, an MG, a Sunbeam, and a Jag. So it's a really nice cross section of high quality cars, spanning a couple of decades and a couple of continents as well.
Yeah, let's talk a couple of those cars because there really is some great stuff in that collection. I mean, first off the top, I mean, you can't miss it. 1966 Ferrari 275 GTB 6C alloy Berlinetta. It's chassis number 8157, coachwork by Scaglietti. It's a 6-carb car, originally sold to the Pirelli Tire Company, which is incredibly interesting. And it's one of 80 built with the aluminum long nose. So, what's your perspective on this car? The original ownership to Pirelli is super interesting, of course. How do you think that impacts its performance on the block? Kind of give us the rundown on this car.
Well, I think it's huge. As we know, that was the time period where radial tires were starting to become in vogue. Pirelli really was the leader in getting radial tires out into what I call the civilian world. And the fact that this was a car that was noteworthy as part of their ownership, getting us all to think radial tires. So that in itself, and obviously, they're an A-lister still to this day, but the hardware itself, the alloy body Ferrari's always strong. The 1960s was the decade of the transition from Porsche being known for race cars, racing dominance in the 1950s, still carried into the 1960s, but that's where the road going cars, maybe not Enzo's passion because he loved racing, but he knew that the street cars obviously paid for the racing efforts. But the cars were turning into world-class grand touring cars for somebody that wanted a Ferrari and wasn't going to race it, but they wanted the reputation of the Ferrari, the prestige and the status. And we know today, moving forward, that the Ferrari is the number one, the world's, not just in the U.S., it's the number one most sought after single collector mark in the world today. And there's no reason to think why that's not going to continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's the gold standard, certainly. And there's more,
Indeed.
There's more to discuss there too. I mean, and you talk about the road cars that he wasn't so passionate about necessarily, but he built some great ones during that era. And you've got a couple of pretty super coupes coming up. And I always go back to this analogy with these cars before I ever talk about them. These are the cars that you think about when you're talking like 2 a.m., mid-1960s, A6 freeway, 150 miles an hour, 2 a.m., window cracked, cold air coming in, and you're listening to that wonderful V12 serenade you. Like, it is ultimate control, and these cars just demonstrate that beautifully. First up, 1965 Ferrari 500 Superfast Series 2. It's the desirable Series 2 car. One of 36 500 Superfast built by Pininfarina, and it's the first of the 12 Series 2 cars examples built. Concours winner, recent service by Mark Experts. It's got the tool roll and all the goodies included. And you kind of got the car that's a little bit sort of based on 1963 Ferrari 400 Super America Series 2 on that one also. It's chassis 4651. It's one of 22 long wheelbase Series 2 cars built from 62 to 64. And it's got the coupe aerodynamico bodywork by Pininfarina, which is astonishingly beautiful. Rare open headlight, which I've not seen actually before, with that bodywork, but it's stunning. New Kraman glass all the way around, and it's got its tool roll as well. Compare and contrast these cars. It's kind of explain to people maybe what they're for above and beyond kind of my, mystical little ramblings there at the beginning of that. But, kind of give us the details on these and how they relate to each other and what they sort of meant for Ferrari and who these cars were originally designed for.
Well, Ferrari, they obviously with these cars, they stuck with their V12 platform, but they were really made for the U.S. market because, as we know, that was a time period where big engines and high horsepower was in vogue here in the U.S. Performance cars always strong in Europe, but they would rather kind of operate with a scalpel than a sledgehammer compared to the bigger engine cars we're having here. So Ferrari thought, it might be a good idea starting with the 400 Super America and then growing up into transitioning into the 500 Superfast, which of all the Ferraris of all time is my number one favorite. It's a monster 5-liter V12. They were rated 400 horsepower back then. It was the most expensive Ferrari by far. It was twice as much as any other Ferrari, twice as much as a Rolls-Royce back in the time period. And as you said, only one of 12 of the Series 2 cars. They're so rare. They're so exotic. They're so unique in their styling. A lot of people have never seen one. In fact, I'm a Ferrari enthusiast. Sounds like you are too. I have never actually seen one in person. I can't wait to see this car. And with a little bit of luck, we'll just slide inside the car behind the wheel, not to drive it, just to go ahead and bask in the architecture of the interior. But a very husky, muscular, ultra rare, and crazy, wild, expensive. We are talking multiple 7-figure dollar values on both the 400 Super America and the 500 Superfast.
Yeah, I mean, those cars were built for royalty, no question about it. And they delivered. I mean, you had to be somebody to even have an opportunity to buy those cars. So the fact that you have two of them available is going to be an incredible moment for somebody on the block, certainly.
Well said.
Up next, probably my favorite Ferrari of all time. Now, we can probably argue about this a little bit, but I've said this probably quite a lot, that I think the 330 GTC and the 330 GTS are the best all-around built Ferrari road cars of all time. And this is a good one here. Chassis number 111179, and it is the 95th of 100 of these removable top cars available. Rare factory air conditioning on this car. And it's pretty fascinating delivery story as well. Originally delivered to Montreal, Canada, of all places. Tool roll jack, wheel chunk, knockoff hammer, all that good stuff is included, as well as the owner's manual leather pouch with warranty booklet, of course, in French because of Canada, excuse me. Operating handbook, spare parts catalog, and radio with the instructions there. Am I totally off base with my claim that because these are kind of difficult cars to understand until you kind of figure them out. Like, they're not race cars for the road like the 275 is, or, it's maybe easier to compare it to the Daytona, but I mean, for me, it's kind of a little bit lighter car. Am I off base here, or am I batting sort of in the right box here?
Nope, I think you're right on track. It was the evolution of the priority being Grand Touring, and the fact that we've got literal bookends. We've got, the coupe version, we've got the convertible version. The fact that the convertible version has air conditioning is super rare and exotic. That's really going to push that price up. But that indicates really what the purpose of these cars were for. To have either one, this is by the way, 1968, the end of the line for the 330 GTC and of course the GTS. It's, stablemate, evolving into and getting into the point where now it's time for the Daytona to kind of start taking over in the genre. It really represents sort of a pinnacle or a landmark of a evolution of what Ferrari was doing, just like everybody else, trying to not only stay competitive, but to stay one step ahead. And, as we know now, these cars were built in such small quantities compared to so many other cars. I hate to use the Corvette as a comparison. It's not fair, but certainly compared to the Corvette, the American equivalent at the time. And, it's that rarity and it's that mystique and the condition of these cars, the colors. I mean, everything is just going to conspire to draw buyers, not only just there in the house at Monterey, but those cars are going to get world attention. very possible that the cars out of this collection may be sold and leave the country. They're just so hard to find and so sought after by not only Ferrari collectors, but automobile enthusiasts in general.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great collection. There's a ton of other stuff there that's worth looking at. Like you mentioned, there's some wonderful British stuff. There's fabulous Porsches. Definitely visit Mecum.com and kind of check it out. And you got some other really interesting stuff that's not in that collection too. I mean, the couple that caught my eye, 1957 Mercedes-Benz 300 SL Roadster. This one is a body off classic and Mercedes-Benz Classic Center restoration recipient, People's Choice at Amelia Island Concours. There's kind of a reason, I think, why it was selected that way. According to Mercedes-Benz, this is the first strawberry red metallic 300 SL Roadster. It's a 1 year only color, and it includes its luggage package with it. It's could be kind of a polarizing color. I mean, what do you think? These strawberry red SLs, we've seen a few 190s cross the block, but it's pretty rare to see a 300. So, I mean, where do you think this kind of winds up?
I think a huge premium for the color. I think the fact that the restoration quality, of course, speaks for itself, but I think that the unique color, and not just because it's been painted that color, but because it's been, it was that way from the factory when it was restored, they brought it back. We do see color changes from time to time, and the values are still very high. You say 300 SL, and I mean, that's an A-lister in anybody's book. But no, I think that color is going to have massive appeal, and I think it also indicates really the level of high quality cars that Mecum Monterey specifically attracts. I like to say from time to time that an auction like Mecum Monterey will have more Ferraris than Camaros and more Porsches than Mustangs. And there's no other auction on our lineup that's going to have, it's going to flip and flop like that. And then you start sprinkling in other cars, whether they be Lamborghinis or Maseratis or the exotic Mercedes-Benzes like we're just talking about, to kind of sprinkle in there. It's going to be an exciting event, and it's going to be something that's going to be, a little bit different of what folks would normally expect to see at a Mecum auction. I think it's our 13th or 14th year in Monterey. So we've established ourselves. Mecum is a real player. We're part of that culture there now. And, at the Del Monte Golf Course, it's a phenomenal facility. Cars all laid out on the golf course, on the fairways. Some cars under tents, but a lot of cars just sitting out on the fairways, and, tickets in advance, $20 in advance, $30 at the door. I think it's the best value in Monterey. You want to spend a day looking at cool cars and enjoying the auction action.
Yeah, it's a good time. There's a lot of variety. The auction site location is really well laid out. It's a good time. If you're in the Monterey Peninsula area during Car Week, like it's a must visit event for sure. Okay, John, Mecum is obviously an incredibly high volume auction company, and you are there at the front row talking about virtually every car that crosses the block. So very few people on earth have as much knowledge about this stuff firsthand as you do. So why don't you give us one car to buy, one car to sell, and one car to hold in today's marketplace?
Well, I think the one to buy is a pretty easy answer. It's a car that was a very popular car back in the day. I'm kind of building up for a little suspense here. It was an aspirational car for a lot of youngsters. Those youngsters now are grown up a bit, and they are seeking out the best examples. I don't think the market has nearly peaked, but the prices are on the rise. And if you have been thinking about getting a Fox body Mustang, 1979 through the early 1990s, this is the time. The prices are officially on the march, but have not reached the peak yet. So anybody listening that has been thinking about a Fox body Mustang to relive the car that they wanted back in the day or the car they had back in the day, I think now is the time to buy. What's really hot in that segment are the cars that are all original, cars that are unmodified, and of course, cars that are low mileage with a good history as well. If the cars have been modified, if the cars are just sort of, worn out old cars, those aren't the cars that the collectors are seeking. They're really seeking the best of the best. And over the past 2-3 years, we've seen interest and demand for Fox Mustangs just explode. And as a part two to it, quickly, it's a competitor, which would be the F-bodies from GM in the same time period. Same thing applies. If you're a GM guy, Camaro Firebird, or any of those variants, or a Mustang guy, those cars are officially on the march as the next wave of collectors that love those cars. They're coming of age and they're snapping them up. So get them while they're hot.
So, it's an interesting comparison. Obviously, it's a natural comparison, but you have the IROC versus the Mustang. I mean, what trim level? Right. The IROC, you got to get the IROC. Obviously, I mean, there's only so many options. I guess there's a couple different engine options, and you can get the 5-speed on the 5-liter, so on and so forth. Yep. But you're a little bit more restricted there. Whereas with the Fox body, you have the LX, you have the GT. You can start getting into the more rare trim levels of that. So what trim level would you suggest maybe on a Mustang, and what would you expect to maybe pay for what you think the ideal version of that is? And what would that compare to, say, a similar Camaro?
Yeah, what's funny, there's a disparity in what's considered to be really hot in the Fox body world versus the high performance Camaro world. And that is the mid-level LX with the optional 5-liter engine is the hot one, not the GT. The GT's heavier. It's a little more ornate in its appearance, but the performance legend, the car that everybody talks about when you start having any discussion about the Fox body is, the little mid-trim level car with that 5-liter engine now, as we know. So many of those cars were ordered and bought and very heavily modified, primarily for drag racing and high performance street driving as well. Those aren't the ones that seem to be ringing the bell right now. It's the cars that were well taken care of with a lot of originality. But that having said, do not discount the GT. The GT still has the look, and it's got, more eyeball from a standpoint that it looks high performance. The LX does not, other than the GT wheels and tires that are on it. So either one of those two variants, those are going to be the ones to get. Anything with a manual transmission, automatics available too, are going to be worth the premium as well. And so, ultimately, and of course, the cars were built over a long period of time, well over a decade. So there's different variants and different engines and different, there was a transition of the personality of the car during that long production run. So, but, everybody kind of has an idea of what they look for, what they wanted, what they remembered. And those are the ones that they seek out. And very rarely did they cross the block without going to a new home. That market's so strong right now.
Yeah, no doubt.
Talk about and on the Camaro side, it's a little bit of a different story. Because a mid-level RS with the optional V8, which would be comparable to the LX, isn't going to get a whole lot of attention. It's going to be the performance versions, the Z28s and the IROCs. And those are the cars that right now are just ringing the bell. If we go back on both the Mustang and the Camaro variants, we go back, maybe to 2015, a really nice low mileage example, well taken care of, a car that's, maybe a 1-owner or a 2-owner car with a good history. That car maybe would have been let's say a $12,000 to $18,000 car. That car today is a $25,000 to $30,000 car. And I don't think it's going to end. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, I think we can see those cars getting up to the $40,000, maybe $50,000 range. They've got to be the right car, not all of them, but I would not be surprised if we see that happening on a pretty regular basis. Cars of our youth. I mean, nostalgia is a powerful motivator for folks.
Yeah, no doubt. And build quality was not great on those cars too. So, I mean, despite the production numbers being high as they were, there's a lot of those cars that didn't survive. And restoration, it presents a bunch of different challenges that maybe weren't the same way on the mid-century cars. So, I think that there's definitely a lot of potential for those to grow in the marketplace as that generation gets more and more disposable income and wants to, as you said, recapture those years. So what are we going to sell?
Well, what we're seeing is street rods. Now, a vintage street rod, a car that was built back in the 50s or 60s that's been brought up to a high level of restoration, or it's a nice original, or a street rod from the modern era that's been also built to a high standard with a vintage look, continue to be strong. But the rank and file street rods that were built back, maybe in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and you can identify those a lot of times with the pastel colors and billet wheels and gray tweed interiors for those of your listeners that can remember those days. They can be bought for pennies on the dollar right now. So that's considered to be a good buy. The market's more than likely not going to be going up. I don't think we're going to see a lot of nostalgia for that bygone street rod era, that theme. So I think if I had one right now and I wasn't driving it much, I think it'd be a good time to get that thing on the market, convert that cash into something else, and move forward. Now, a lot of people might think that, okay, well, maybe 50s cars might start easing off a little bit. They were popular for a while, 57 Thunderbirds, so actually the 55 through 57s, and of course the Tri-5 Chevys. But you know what's funny? We've seen remarkable consistency and strong prices in that segment. It seems to be transitioning generationally. It seems to be. We're going to continue to keep an eye on that. But at our Houston auction a couple months ago, we sold a 57 Chevy. It was restored. It was a black one. It brought $250,000, not a resto mod. It was a dual quad 3-speed car, brought $250,000. Now, there was a story behind the car that you just go to Mecum.com or Google that. The Lakewood 57 Chevy, as it's called. But $250,000 shocked everybody. Didn't surprise me, because that's a car, that era, not that car, that era, the 50s. People can identify with the era. You didn't have to have been there to understand what a revolution it was for styling and performance, color, fashion, music. I mean, pop culture, everything began a huge change in the 60s. Everything changed again. The cars reflect that, and they allow all of us, young people, old people, doesn't matter, to kind of dabble in those eras. So, we kind of would have thought those cars would have grayed out, as the term is used in the collector car world, but we're not finding that to be the case.
It's interesting. I kind of equate the appeal of some of the 50s cars with, and I guess to a certain degree, the street rods you're talking about too, with blue jeans. There's a style for the era, but a lot of times it kind of comes back and becomes hot again. I mean, if you kind of think about what's popular right now, a lot of the sort of cut and fade of and feel of the 50s, blue jeans are similar to what is out now. And it all kind of goes in circles that way. At the same point in time, you think about like the bedazzled stuff that was popular back when a lot of those people were building these hot rods with tweed interior. They're really out of fashion now. So it's an interesting sort of comparison to kind of look at the pop culture elements and kind of line that stuff up. And I think it definitely makes sense. So what car are we going to hold?
Well, again, I have a completely different perspective than a lot of people. But if you own a car or a collection and you love those cars and they're your passion, you spent your life acquiring those cars and they make you happy, you go out to the collection or out to the garage, whether you drive it, sit in it, doesn't matter. And it still talks to you. It still brings you into your happy place. Then that's a car, regardless of not whether you think it's going to go up or it's going to go down in value. Unless you need the money, that's the car that you go ahead and sell. Now, if you've got a collection of cars and you find that there are 1 or 2 or 3 or more that you're simply not driving anymore, not taking care of anymore, and not having that same love affair or that same passion with, because of the overall general strength of the market right now, Darren, those are the cars that probably ought to go, that probably should go. Everything else, you should probably just stay. I don't think this market in general, the collector vehicle market, is poised at all to see huge reductions in price. You can talk about electrifications or all electric, all these other buzzwords. Frankly, we don't know where this market's going yet. We know that electric is here and it's here to stay, but we don't know exactly how that's going to evolve and how that's going to change. In the short term, the next 10 to 20 years, I don't think it's going to have any impact or at all on these ICE-powered vehicles that are so important to us as collectors and enthusiasts. I'm not anti-electric at all. I think they're really fun to drive and they're really cool. But there is something about an ICE engine that's going to have long-term appeal. And what that's going to do, I think that's going to resonate with the market. I think even some of these late model performance cars, 2024 will be the last year of the Camaro, 2023, last year of the current Charger Challenger platform. The new Mustang has been announced as an ICE platform. We'll see that in 2024. But I think these cars are going to be the cars that if you've got one, if you have one and you're driving, you're enjoying it, I don't think that's going to be the worst investment somebody can make. Go out and get one of those cars while you can. Don't beat the heck out of it. Don't modify the heck out of it. Take care of it. Drive it with fun, but take care of it. And down the road, when it comes time to sell, I think you'll do just fine with it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right on that. The electric thing is a thing for sure, but there's always going to be that nostalgia for those cars. And if you look at things like video games that are out right now, or you look at the movies that are out right now, a lot of people in those types of media are using those cars as sort of their hero vehicles. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that would indicate that we've got a good 20 some years where these are still going to be valuable and still be collectible, and the nostalgia is still going to be there. And candidly, I think 60s muscle cars potentially could do that too, based on the sort of media connections that we were talking about. So, I agree. I don't think it's over yet. I think the pull for electric is going to change things, but it very well could change things for the better, certainly. So where can people, do you have any final thoughts?
Just, I just want to say on behalf of all of us at Mecum, 150 full-time employees at our headquarters and 300 or 400, depending on the size of the auction, that put our auctions on, we really appreciate your interest. It's always a pleasure talking cars with you, talking market trends. We love to be a part of it. We love to have our thoughts heard. And we hope to see anybody that's listening out there to actually visit a Mecum auction in person. And of course, you can always stay connected. Mecum.com has got so much information on it. We invite everybody to go take a look. A lot of people search the results and give us feedback and say it may very well be one of the top sources for determining values based on actual sales. You can see the cars, the descriptions, the photographs. You can see what it sold for or what the high bid was. All you got to do is go to Mecum.com, become a My Mecum member. It's totally free and easy to do. And that unlocks the backside of it for you. So,
yeah, it's a great website. It's real easy to get lost there for hours and hours on end and not regret it one little tiny bit. So I've done it quite a few times for the last couple of weeks. So anyway, fantastic resource. We'll obviously link that in the video description down below. And I look forward to seeing everybody out there. I would like to thank our guest, John Kraman, today for joining us. To learn more about anything that we discussed here, be sure to pick up the latest issue of Sports Car Market Magazine by visiting the link in the video description down below. As a reminder, if you enjoyed this content, please take a moment to like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay on top of future episodes. I'm Darren Roberge, and thank you for joining us on the Buy, Sell, Hold Spotlight.